One. Welcome to In the Know. Mason and I are back recording for the first time in a long time, hoping to be semi-regular. No promises. You know how we are for this season, but figured we'd get back on the mic. Mason, what's up with you?
Not too much, man. Excited for the season to start. I was hyped for even preseason Pelicans basketball, and then I watched the first couple of games and got frustrated and annoyed, and then remembered it's just preseason, and I'm just ready for the games to count again. Ready for some healthy Zion Williamson. Obviously, the team can never be fully healthy, so we've already got some injuries, but at least the main guys are ready to go, and I'm amped up. How about you?
Yeah. I basketball season or NBA season specifically is always my favorite time of year. You know, it's when I can finally start tuning into a Twitter timeline that isn't all football. So it's a good time for me. I'm excited. Just a couple of housekeeping notes before we get into the meat of our discussion. So we'll be posting these podcasts both in audio format and video format. You should be able to get the audio where you've been getting them, Spotify, Apple, all that good stuff. And then the video, we'll have a YouTube channel set up and you guys can tune in there. The branding and the look of it will probably change as we move forward and kind of explore our different platforms that we might want to use. And which, by the way, if you have any suggestions, we're open to hearing them. But I just wanted to keep y'all on the loop or in the loop regarding that stuff. In the know
In the
is going to
know,
be
man.
function. In the know. In the know is going to be in the know. Not associated with anybody. No no external network that we're going to be a part of. And obviously the one thing it will be associated with is the Substack, which is in the know. So make sure you do check that out. So welcome back. Welcome back to another season of Pelicans basketball. Mason, let's talk about the preseason first, and then we'll can kind of get into like the regular season and the expectations. So they had 4 preseason games, not that many. Got them done in a very quick succession. They didn't really have much break in between the games, and they've had a good bit of time now leading up to the season opener to practice after these. Any key takeaways from you regarding what transpired in the preseason?
Um, I'm trying to say no just because it is preseason. I think they clearly tried some stuff. Some stuff worked, some stuff didn't work. I like the way they kind of ended the preseason. It feels like you've noted this, but they're kind of leaning more into the point Zion. I think they're going to try to get different players looks on the ball, to at least to start out. But I think this team knows how to be at its best, which is, Zion on the ball. Not really like heliocentric to that degree, but just make sure the ball's in his hands as much as possible. And I am curious to see how they. I think the thing that I'm most curious to see what they do in the regular season, like kind of looking at the preseason and then to now, is how much they lean into small ball. And I know we'll talk about that from your awesome most recent post from your Substack. But what is that going to look like? The different players who can potentially. I mean, it's almost out of necessity because of the Larry Nance injury to start the year. But what is Herb Jones, EJ, Zion, like what does that look like in the front court? Because they did try a few different things in the preseason, and it should be exciting. It should be fast paced, if nothing else.
Yeah, no doubt. I thought your observations are pretty much spot on. I think in the first couple of games, they wanted to lay the foundation of the system when they weren't really worried about the specifics of like, hey, we were building in sets for Zion, BI, all that stuff. I think Willie Green had a kind of shocking quote after game 2, like, oh, I don't really have any sets in for Zion, which was like, what? But Brandon Ingram kind of echoed something similar a few practices later, like we don't really have many sets in. To me, that illuminates more so that, hey, Borrego was brought in. We're going to kind of tweak the system. Let's get the broad strokes down first and then start optimizing things. So I don't really have an issue with that statement. And I think at the end of the day, they're all aware who their best players are and how they need to distribute some of those touches. The second thing is you pointed out that we started to see more Zion on the ball as the preseason went on. And I think that is where they have their biggest advantage. He's their best player. And I think that can also kind of change the geometry of the court and push them towards the shot profile that they're actually looking for, which is more catch and shoot threes, more corner threes, more opportunities for CJ and BI to attack tilted defenses rather than stagnant defenses. And I think that's kind of the goal here. But they will have to mix in sets where Zion's off the ball to keep things from going stale and keep teams from being able to load up in the way that they frequently do. And I'm excited to kind of see that moving forward. Let's I have a couple thoughts on some of the specific players, but really it's preseason, so I don't care too much about that. So let's actually dive right in to some of the small ball stuff. So when media day happened in the next few practices, the idea of Z at the 5 was really kind of like the topic du jour. Like they wanted to kind of, first it was like a soft launch, then it was like, no, like we're actually going to try this stuff. So when you were hearing that buzz, what were you thinking, and like what are your general thoughts on
that? Fun, but a little scary. Just because, look, this team, the one of the weaknesses you can point out other than shooting is rebounding. I think you've got a couple guys who are really good at it, and the rest is kind of aren't good at it. And so when you take out Jonas, for example, from the lineup, everyone kind of, when you think about who's at their, Zion at the 4, he's already kind of an okay defender or rebounder. Zion at the 5 is probably not a good rebounder at all, comparatively speaking. And so when you slide everyone down a spot, you just accentuate that weakness. And so that's the risk, obviously, that the what you need to be able to do, and what you've very astutely talked about, is just crash on the offensive end and score. And that way defense gets a little bit easier. And then hopefully, when you're set, the defensive rebounding issues are, at least they're not alleviated, but they are somewhat minimized. And so I think that's the concern, and the additional concerns around, well, if you have small ball pace and space, do you have enough spacing, especially with Trey Murphy out? That's another concern. So do you have the personnel to really maximize this? But regardless, I think when anyone hears small ball, and with Zion at the 5, a bunch of guys who are real athletes and versatile, it is pretty exciting to think about what that could look like.
Yeah, I think Z at the 5 is like the Hollywood branding of it, where like if you look under the hood of what's actually transpiring in those lineups, it's Herb at the 5. Yeah. And so again, it's just to kind of bring up those concerns with Z with regards to rebounding and just defense in general. Not that Herb's an amazing rebounder, he's just a lot more gifted defensively. And so I think the couple things you brought up is typically when teams go small, they're trying to sacrifice size in favor of getting more shooting on the court. And I don't think the Pelicans, without Trey Murphy, are actually accomplishing that in a meaningful way. They're not really getting more offense on the court, which is going to be an interesting challenge moving forward. The second thing is the Pelicans are kind of using this time, from my understanding, to figure out if obviously, Larry at the 5 is going to be a little bit different, but it's the same concept, is if they can find a configuration that can run opponent bigs off the court. If the opponents are able to just plant their big on Larry, you've kind of mitigated your advantage in going small, right? You haven't ran a big off the court. You're going to get killed on the glass. You haven't really opened the paint up for Z. And, the idea is you just went small to get your best defenders on the court, which is worked out for the Pelicans, surprisingly. I'm not a big believer in it long term, but the Larry and Zion units were pretty dominant when they did play together. Same concept with Herb. Can Herb at the 5, quote unquote, be a person that can run bigs off the court, right? That is the ultimate goal for those Zion constructions. You want the big to be forced to guard Zion and everyone else to have enough shooting, dribbling, passing, whatever it is, to make it literally impossible to defend. So it's death by 1,000 cuts. And there's hardly any bigs in the league capable of staying with Zion, especially on a spaced out floor. So that's what they're, I think, looking to find out, is do they have that on the roster? Which I don't think they do, but I'm curious if you feel differently.
No, I mean, I think the big question is, what does what does Herb Jones force the defense to do that Larry Nance doesn't? And I don't have a good answer to that question. I mean, why can't a defense just plant their big on Herb Jones and live with it? And so that I think that's kind of what you're getting at is they don't have someone to force the uncomfortable matchups at this point. And so, well, it does give you versatility, switchability on defense. It allows you to kind of be more flexible in that regard. You're giving up size, and so is that trade-off worth it if you're not truly generating matchup advantages on offense?
Yeah, I think the one thing they see with Herb is he has a little more on ball equity than Larry.
Sure. Yep.
And so can you put him in situations where he's the ball handler, he's the screener, that kind of stuff, right? Can you get the big that they're hiding on Herb involved in ball screens and adequately spaced out floor? Can you do that? I think those are all good ideas, but at the end of the day, if the offense is moving away from the ball in Zion's hands, the ball in Brandon's hands, the ball even in CJ's hands, to the ball in Herb's hands, the defense has already won. Like you already won that battle. So I applaud the Pelicans for exploring the nature of that. I think that's something they want to do is put the ball in their non-shooters' hands a little more to lift the offense, pressure the defense. And I think over the course of the regular season, that's a necessary thing and something that will ultimately end up helping them. I'm a little dubious on its playoff viability. So I guess the question then becomes is, okay, if this is the kind of style you want to play, then should, everyone's talked about upgrading the center position and maybe JV can be moved out for whatever. And is it worth investing assets in yet another center who may not be able to shoot, may not be able to play that switch style? Or should they just kind of keep the powder keg dry and get a super Herb, super Larry, like a forward who can legitimately play that position, offer you the spacing, offer you the shooting and all the above?
Sounds nice. Find me that dude. I mean, this is the quintessential problem we've talked about off and on since Zion became a Pelican, right? Is who is the right front court partner for him? And it's a really hard question to answer.
Yeah, I agree. So I think there's a few things, right? So I think there's I think the super version, the kind of like the what made this proposition attractive last year was the OG Anunoby trade, right? So getting OG who's got good size, who has experience playing small ball five, can shoot, can dribble, is an offensive threat, a credible offensive threat. If you were to roll out a unit that featured CJ, Trey, BI, Zion, and OG, like that would be a pretty devastating unit. And I think at that point you're kind of like in the future looking to upgrade the CJ position because that would be your kind of weakest one in terms of defense. But that'd be pretty devastating offensively. The second thing is, there's another guy on that team, Pascal Siakam, who makes a lot more money. He's on an expiring contract, wants a lot more money. Again, he's like the super Larry, right? He's the super version of what Larry gives you in almost every sense. So like, is that a route that they want to go down? Is that a route you would be comfortable going down? Again, to get that trade done, they would probably have to involve CJ. So like you're trading out one of your big salary pieces for another big salary piece.
I love the season hasn't even started yet. We're already talking about trades and how to make this team better. But I mean, yeah. But the other issue here is, you are if you make that deal, you are in the tax. There is no way around it. Especially, I mean, because you're not trading for Pascal to rent him for a year, right? And so then it's the BI Pascal and Zion show, unless you're looking at flipping BI, which I mean, future discussion, but yeah, I mean, like if the Pelicans are up for it, I got a lot of shit on Twitter from Saints fans for making a joke about paying Derek Carr and not paying the tax, as if I can, like, because I'm conflating football and basketball. But let's go, let's dive right in.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting the way my understanding with how the Pelicans are approaching it. It's twofold. Firstly, I guess like let's talk about Siakam specifically. I don't think they're the biggest fans of Siakam. And I don't think, with how that, like, the contract situation is going to play out, that's something that they want to get into at the moment. Secondly, I think they are keenly aware at this moment, in order to win the West, they need to go through Nikola Jokic. And in order to go through Nikola Jokic, I think they're keenly aware that they need the types of players that can defend Nikola Jokic. Now, first of all, who are those guys? I don't think they exist, right? I don't even know. I don't think they exist. But, like, I think the intention here is that, like,
He cooked
guys
AD.
that
Like, what do you do? Like, and we give this is the AD slander podcast more than anything, but like, AD is an incredible defender, and he got cooked. And so, like, yeah, who is that guy?
right? Who is that guy? So I think there's that a little bit of that question is like, do you build to combat your rivals, or do you force your rivals to match up with you, right? I think that's a decision that the team is going to have to make. And so, can you make it so you're seeding, are you going to cede the size advantage to Jokic and the Nuggets, who are huge, by the way? MPJ 6'10", like, Aaron Gordon 6'8", like, they're not small in the front court. Are you going to cede the size advantage to just try to outscore them, or do you feel like you can have an equivalently good offense while being able to employ a big who can both start and close and credibly give you, 35 minutes against Jokic when you need him the most? And then you kind of have your small ball button, your turbo button in your back pocket for when you need it against other teams. So, like, I don't know the right answer to that, right? If you, like, let's take, for example, if you really believed in Jared Allen as the type of big that was able to defend Jokic for without fouling out, for 30-35 minutes, then how do you get enough offense on the court to match what the Nuggets are doing?
I mean, the other four guys have to be able to shoot. That's for starters.
3 guys, because Zion's going to be on the court.
Fair enough. Yes.
Right.
So
so I don't know if there's a right answer to that. I'm curious to see how they tackle this philosophical problem. But as of now, I do think they, and like pretty much every other team in the West, looks as the Nuggets as the team to get through. And they're going to have to decide how they want to get through that team, which is a little bit exciting in some regards, because I feel like, it's not of a, hey, like, we're going to make the playoffs, or we might make the playoffs. They're looking at it from a, we want to get through the Nuggets at some point. So, like, they're actually viewing it from, like, we're trying to win standpoint, which is good, which is encouraging, which is like, you might say, hey, Shamit, that's what they're paid to do. They should be thinking of it in that regard all the time. But, it's not really a thing that happens on all teams. And you kind of see that. But I don't know. I don't know if there's a super forward out there at the moment that can really swing the balance, but I wouldn't be opposed to them making that type of deal.
Yeah, if we can get like 7 years younger Al Horford, that's a guy we talked about a lot as kind of that tweener who's a really good defender and also can shoot a little. So yeah, it's really tough to find that right guy. And we've again been talking about it for a while now. And so but like, to your point, like, if it is Allen, what other roster construction, or I don't know, I don't want to say it's Jared Allen, but like, if it's a player like him, what other roster construction implications does that have? And there are some. And so, that's what the front office has to figure out. I guess we need a healthy Zion for a prolonged period first, but yeah.
there's 2 big implications for a guy like Allen. One, I think the theory is it gives Willie Green and his staff a more comfort to play Trey Murphy at the starting position, even though I think that should be a no-brainer decision regardless of who the big is. But, like, that's number one. If you have a non-shooting big and he's a non-creating big, like, JV can create for himself a little. Like, you can throw the ball to him and he can kind of make stuff happen. Allen's got to be fed, like, pretty much exclusively. So if you have that kind of big who's going to be primarily like a high screen roll guy or a dunker spot guy, then you need shooting, as you mentioned. You need shooting. You can't start Herb there. You just can't. Like, if you start Herb, Z, and Allen, it's going to be a bad time. So if you can't start Herb,
it's Bledsoe, Adams, and Zion all over again.
Oh my gosh, yeah, no. And if you can't start Herb, then it makes him a little bit less valuable, because if Jared is closing games, then Herb's probably not closing games. So like his minutes are probably coming down from 34, 35 to like in the 20s, right? And if you're bringing Herb off the bench, it makes Dyson less valuable because he's also coming off the bench. And do you bring both of them off the bench together? Like, is that a unit that you're comfortable playing? So it creates a lot of problems from that regard, which I don't think are the worst problems, right? Because like you could easily include one of those two guys in the deal to go get Allen, and you're kind of, taken from one, putting in the other type of situation. But a lot of problems are caused by the fact that none of the Pelicans' main guys are credible defensively. So if you can't, they have to jump through hoops to try to get defenders on the court because you can't put Z on a guy and expect them to stop him, right? You can't put BI on a guy and expect them to get stops. You can't put CJ on a guy and expect them to get stops. You can't put, at least not yet, you haven't been able to put Trey on a guy and expect him to get stopped. So it's just like they're in a situation where you're going to get offense on the court. You're going to have to rely on fundamentally sound team defense, which I think they're capable of, that functions on the back.
I think.
Right. Which functions on the back of a good offense, right? They score a lot. They're able to get in half court. And then, half court is just a better, more efficient defensively than any other kind of setting. So, but the other aspect is, okay, like they need stoppers, but none of their stoppers are credible offensively. So they're just in a weird roster building spot. And in my opinion, only in that spot because of their main guys.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is. And look, credit to the coaching staff, or not, credit to the front office for, I think this is the fact that they gave Herb the extension now is pretty massive and gives him more flexibility. And I know that they can't trade him for a certain period of time. I'm not saying that's the lever they should pull immediately, but it makes him an asset that's cost controlled and a good player on a good contract. And so I think if they've got to make them, or they want to make a move and they want to, like you said, shift around skill sets and positionally, so to speak, they have the ability to do that based on, it's not Herb Jones is an expiring who's about to hit the market, right? He's a contract that is valuable and can be a nice piece in a deal if you're trying to kind of shake up the construction of the roster.
Yeah, look, I think I've always thought this is a pivotal year moving forward with regards to the BI and Zion duo, with regards to who's going to retain their job if this season goes sideways. BI's up for an extension. He is up for one now, but he's not going to take the one this year. He's up for extension next year for all intents and purposes. And what he's betting on, or not betting on, what he's attempting to do is secure an all-NBA spot. If he secures all-NBA spot, he'll be eligible for a 35% max contract. What that number is going to look like is very similar to what the Jaylen Brown number looks like, which is a $304 million extension. It's probably going to be a little bit more because it kicks in a year later, but that's the idea of it. That's the broad strokes. That's what Brandon Ingram wants to accomplish. I think if Brandon Ingram is a legitimate all-NBA player, beats out several big names, legitimize himself as a top 12, top 15 guy in the league, and I think that's a player probably worth paying for. I think if Brandon Ingram reaches all NBA because he played 67 games and Paul George played 55 and Kawhi played 50 and LeBron played 60, and you get the idea, then that's not a number I'm comfortable paying him at all. The other thing is, with 2 years left on his contract, at the deadline to be about a year and a half, that is kind of the pivotal point on, like, if you want to move him, that is where maximum value lies. Like, him on an expiring trying to move in the summer is a difficult move because unless he agrees, like, I have a list of destinations, I will just re-up with them. But teams will always use that against you in a negotiation. It is easier to do so mid-season. I mean, the peak time to move him was this previous draft. And then obviously they chose not to do that, and they believe in him. But at the deadline, is probably the next best time if they decide they want to move on. What would the threshold need to be for you to decide to make that move mid-season for a guy that they have very clearly invested in, and by all intents, by all accounts, want to continue to invest in?
So how good does BI have to be for me to just say I don't want to trade him, I want to extend him? Is that the question?
Yeah, in a sense. Or what has to go? What has to happen this season for you to be like, he needs to move on this deadline, or like what needs to be available in the market?
Um, I think first and foremost, for me, thinking about BI specifically, it comes down to team success. I feel like we know what his abilities are as a scorer, as a secondary facilitator. I think I don't expect to see just a massive leap this season from last season. But what I would want to see is I want to see team success, and whether with or without Zion. And I think the without part is pretty important, because last year that didn't happen. Zion was hurt and the team was not good. And if the BI is truly that guy who's going to be an all NBA threat, the team wouldn't be bad with Zion out and the rest of the team. Like, because that the roster, it isn't without Zion. It's not good. It's not great, but like if BI is that good, he should be able to keep the team afloat, and that couldn't happen last year. Of course, Zion never came back, but the hope was that they're still afloat. They're still doing well without him. So that's what it really comes down to. Can he make the team better versus just keeping up his own scoring averages? And so if I see improved record in games without Zion, or just the team kicks ass with him and Zion together, that's the barometer for me. I don't really know. I haven't really thought as much about like if who comes available, like who would I pull the trigger for? It's a good question, but that's what I'm thinking about when I think about BI, because he's been able to get he's had great isolation scoring numbers. Like I'm not worried about that with him, but it hasn't translated to wins without Zion.
Yeah, I think for me, like I don't know if this is a fair litmus test, but he would have to be a bona fide all-star. So like the trade deadline happens prior to the all-star break. So, there's a little bit of a window where you don't know, or regards to if he's an all-star. But if he's not an all-star this season, I just don't know how you can justify paying him 30% as a max contract player, which is, again, it might be unfair, but to me, like I need to see that kind of establishment. Like you are unquestionably that guy, rather than, hey, you have an impact of a top 50 player, but you want to get paid like a top 25 player, and so I think the all-star is a threshold for me. And I think we should know by the time the trade deadline comes around if he is
We should
in those talks, because if it's just like he's having a pretty good season and the Pelicans are pretty good, but I don't know, then I would want to try to find the guard or the big that was going to be around for like the next 3 to 4 years with his salary, because I think there's duplicity on the wing spot. You can kind of slide Trey in. Not saying Trey's as good as Brandon Ingram. Do not mistake that. I think you just kind of shuffle around the shots and roles for people. If you can get, man, like this is going to sound crazy, but like, if you go to Brooklyn and they offer you Cam Johnson, the shooter, not the LSU guard, Cam Johnson, Claxton, and some picks, like I feel like your ceiling probably gets lower because none of those guys have a ceiling that BI does, but your floor is probably higher because you got your big that Willie would play. You got Trey 2.0. You could play 2 Treys, and then you have more assets to then use to go get your guard of the future. Something like that. Like then I'd be looking to move CJ and all of the picks to like get the franchise guard, who should probably be like a number 2 type option, right? Like a number 2, number 3. It doesn't have to be like concrete there, because you're gonna have enough shooting on the court, but it'd be cool to go get a franchise guard with that. I don't know if any of this is reasonable, but my threshold would be he's got to be an all-star. And if he's not, then I'm looking to get better fitting pieces that allow some of the other Pelicans pieces to fit better, and allow you to stop investing assets in positional needs that you may invest otherwise. That's kind of like what I'd be looking at.
Yeah, and I feel like it's important again to caveat the fact that you're not saying do this now. You're saying we need more data for this season and to see who Brandon Ingram is. And if he's not that guy, then what trade you looking at? Because I think the hope is that he is that all-star. And look, they've got this group together in this team. These guys who we've long awaited to see how they play together, actually pretty damn good when they play together. And so, like you said to start off, a lot riding on the season.
Yeah, and of course, to your point where you said if they just are like first seed in the West, then first of all, if they're like a top 3 seed, like BI is probably getting that all-star spot just out of respect for the team's wins. But if they're winning at a high level, then I don't really care at that point, right? Like at that point, you keep the guys intact and see how far you can go. Like I think I'm a proponent of that, but it's just so like if the team is like questionable, or if the team is like solid but not great, if the team is great without him but solid with him, if it's one of those situations, then you're kind of looking at that, which is like what's the case last year. They were great without him, solid to with him, not so great without Zion. Samples were too small. Hopefully the samples are bigger this year that allow him to make a decision. Spent too much time on this BI stuff already. Let's move forward to the other guys. Zion. What do you need to see from him to ensure continued investment in him? There's lots of reports on, they were entertaining moving him this past summer. They obviously didn't. If it's not VI, it's Z. If things don't go well, I do think they break up the duo. So like what do you need to see from him to where you're like, I'm locked in, I'm bought in on Z?
For better or for worse, I already am. Regardless, I think it's an abusive relationship at this point, but at the same time, just like I do think basically what it comes down to is the value you get if Zion gets hurt again or something happens. The value you get for Zion is like nothing, right? Or not much. And so I feel like based on where the Pelicans are, their situation, they've got to keep riding it. That's kind of where I'm at. They just got to keep riding it and hope for the best. I don't know. That's where I'm at, because like it does come down to health. I mean, he's been dominant whenever he's been out there. We just haven't seen it for long enough stretches. I really think the value that they'll get for Zion in the trade if he gets hurt again, it just makes it not even worth it, and you just got to kind of roll it back, so to speak. And so that's, for better or for worse, that's where I am.
To me, the threshold with Z is not dissimilar to the one with Brandon. I don't think it's like an outcome where like I think Z is more than capable of making an all-star. He has been a starter already for twice because he's been that good. But my threshold with Z is behind the scenes stuff. If he shows no commitment on his part behind the scenes, for an improvement on his body, improvement on his diet, improvement on his routine, all that kind of stuff. If he shows a lot of the previous habits that he's had, if he's, ghosting team members, skipping out on stuff, that kind of behavior, if that resurfaces or is prevalent in a big way, but he's healthy, I would be okay on moving on from him. Again, it'd be one of those situations where if he's healthy, the team's probably doing good. So it's a difficult decision to make. But I would say that is not a worthwhile long-term bet, and they should capitalize on his health and find an answer elsewhere. And so I don't know what they would be able to get out of him, but Yeah, I don't know what the market would look like. I don't. It's a little bit less clear for me what I would want in terms of a return than BI. But I would say my answer is relatively similar. I'd want either like the franchise big or the franchise guard, something approximating that. But I wouldn't mind if they got like a bunch of wings and a bunch of picks. Like things could be worse there. But yeah, I think it'd be easier to kind of allocate resources towards the big or the guard position, preferably the guard, because I think guards are more valuable than bigs. I'd want creation.
Yeah, so you kind of want the exact opposite direction in that, if he's healthy and things still aren't what you want to see. Yeah, I mean that to me is interesting because if he's got value that's worth moving. Okay, now I'm at least interested. Obviously, the hope is that he's doing the right things and you want to keep him on this team forever. But yeah, I mean, I can totally see where you're coming from.
Like if Houston offers you, let's say they decide like, all right, we're gonna build around Jalen Green, we're gonna build around Amin Thompson. Shit, dude, if you get Amin Thompson out of Houston, that's a big one for me. But like if they offered you like Jabari Smith, Shingun, picks, like I'd probably do it if Zion continued to show behind the scenes that he just wasn't with it. He wasn't bought it. Like I'd be like, whatever, let that be Houston's problem. Which would suck because like obviously a divisional rival if he figures it out and all that kind of stuff. But
your divisional opponents would have Wemby, Luka,
Ja,
and Zion. Hell yeah, that's where I want to be.
Yeah, but like like I think at that point like I would be okay with that, right? Detroit would be another place I'd look at, for them to kind of like make a move. Like if you can, thing is like, I guess you can figure out shooting issues a lot more when Zion's not on your team, right? You can kind of be more creative with it. But like if they offered you like Duran or Asar, and stuff like that would be intriguing to me. Can't really think of other. I mean, like Brooklyn would be the destination. I don't know if Brooklyn is ready for that kind of stuff. But if Brooklyn offered you, and again, I'm not saying, if they offered you a similar like Cam, Cam and Claxton and that kind of stuff, but they would probably have to send Ben Simmons somewhere else. I don't know. It's tough for me to figure out Zion destinations, but if that is what he showed you behind the scenes, it would not matter. Like the return would not matter all that much to me. I would just want really solid pieces and some good assets.
Would be pretty hilarious if you end up going to the other New York team after all that.
That would be pretty funny.
Yeah.
I bet Toronto would do it. So if Toronto I don't know, would they? They didn't go for Dame. They didn't go for Kevin Durant. But yeah, if you did like I wouldn't mind like a Siakam and picks for Z. Like that would be kind of sick.
This is the quintessential Pelican fan experience right now. Where it's not like the season starts this week, and we're talking about what scenarios for trading the two best players in the team.
Yeah, it is. Unfortunately, this is like after 5. This is the fifth year for both those guys on this team, and they have fuck all to show for it. They have one first round loss, which Zion didn't even play in, 2 playoff wins. That's it. They have nothing to show for it. And so you're coming up on big contractual decisions. The CBA has changed to where those contractual decisions in this market matter a lot more than, a market where Ballmer's like, whatever, I don't care about the second apron. Or Matt Ishbia is like, whatever, I don't care about the second apron. It matters for building a team here. That's why I was super in on the Scoot stuff and why, like, even though I would have preferred to move BI, I was like, if they decide Z's the guy to move, then whatever. Because it's so difficult to build something sustainable here when you have 2 guys who just can't get on the court. And when they're on the court, there's other stuff going on that make it challenging to build around. So it's just like, this is it. Both of y'all got to be good this year. Otherwise, I just don't know how you can keep going down this road.
Yeah, I hear
you. That being said, I feel like we've been kind of negative, kind of had a negative overlook on them, probably because we've been jaded from years of covering this team. I have seen a lot of like stuff on Twitter where people like are just ranking the Pelicans super low, and I saw someone rank the Rockets higher than them, and I was like, okay, I think I need I think the needle is swung too far in the other direction, because I would say, like, even amongst Pelicans fans right now, I am more optimistic than most, because they won 42 games in a season where their big three played 10 collective games together, in a season where Zion played 29 games, in a season where BI missed a 2.5 month stretch in the middle of the season. So, like, I think there is a lot of room for improvement there. Now, I don't think they're going to be like a 60-win team, but this is a fairly resourceful and resilient team with how many injuries that they've had, and they managed to stay afloat. Was it pretty? Absolutely not. But, like, 42 wins is 42 wins. Like, to see a backslide on that would, to me, mean something catastrophically had to go wrong, which is not outside the realm of possibilities. But
Yeah.
I just feel like they're not being given enough credit for what they were able to do.
Yeah, no, that is fair. I mean, they gave themselves some wiggle room, honestly, with the start of the season. I mean, they through the new year until we got hit 2023, they were right around top of the West. And so, it is a good point you bring up, and they, they've got I don't see. I guess I looked down the roster and I was like, we had this discussion last year. Who do we expect to get worse? I mean, and so I think we hit, like, because the team was so young, there's not a lot of guys you're going to say age regression. So, like, what do you, and there's, Herb Jones, like, will teams start to figure him out and kind of let him shoot, and does that reduce his value on the floor? But I kind of similar line of thought, like, I would say CJ, but at the same time, CJ played the second half of the season injured. And so I don't expect to see a worse version of CJ this year. Even if there is a slight age regression, it's going to counterbalance with the fact that he's going to be healthy. And so, I mean, I don't look at anyone on the roster, and then they didn't lose anyone of real consequence, and no one on the team I would expect to progress, because Jonas's role was was reduced last year. And so I don't, even again, if he's, big men tend to age a little more quickly, especially bigs who are as physical as Jonas, but he was awesome for Lithuania. And so, like, maybe that's a concern that he played a lot over the offseason. But there aren't a lot of, players I can point to in the Pelicans and say, yeah, he's probably going to take a step back this year.
I would say those are the two big
know.
targets you hit, CJ and JB.
Yeah.
And Larry. I don't think that's out of the question that Larry is not the same guy either. Yeah, I'm a little bit more pessimistic on that front, but I do think you could see a year where CJ's small guard problems start to show themselves in a way that they haven't in the past. But I think it can be mitigated if he takes on a different role, which is take more volume threes, be more of a catch and shoot guy, be more of an off ball guy, which if everyone stays healthy, he can't, right? If everyone doesn't, it gets dicey. Same thing with Larry. Honestly, like, I think Larry's, like, such a smart player and such an important part of what they do. I just wish I could say I have faith in him staying healthy, but what he's being asked to do at his size is just not very sustainable for a long time. It's he has to defend so many bigger players, and it's such a big responsibility. And I think they would be wise to manage his minutes over the course of the season, which, again, if they are healthy, they're able to do. And if they're not healthy, then they just run these guys to the ground. So those are the three big guys. It's concerning, but I expect enough improvement from Trey, from Dyson, from some of these other guys to offset
Kyra,
a lot
maybe.
of that. Yeah. Kyra, even to
get
offset.
A new player. Which is to get a new player too. Yeah. So, I think that's fair. And look, another good reason to lean into some of the small ball stuff early on is to figure out how do you reduce Larry Nance's workload. It's by playing a little bit more small, or giving Jonas a few minutes back from last year.
Yeah. Well, there's always finals role player Cody Zeller to take those minutes. Which, honestly, if the Zeller minutes are better than the Jackson minutes, it'll be a win.
And Matt Ryan too now, right?
Newest Matt Ryan, baby. Love that. Have a shooter. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't expect EJ to be a part of the rotation. I don't expect Hawkins to be a part of the rotation, although Hawk's probably going to get some run early, right, before minutes tighten up. But I when they're trying to win, certainly I don't expect those guys to be part of the rotation. And yeah, I do think they're going to make a trade. It's probably going to be JV and Kyra for some center. And it'll be interesting to see what they do after that, because they know they need shooting. They know they need rim protection. And those are two things they said they were going to address in the offseason, and they addressed zero of them. And again, I want to emphasize drafting Jordan Hawkins does not count as addressing one of those needs. But they addressed zero of them. So I think they will continue to try to address them.
Totally random aside. I was looking at Matt Ryan's stats, because like everyone's like shooter. It's like, okay, does the numbers actually bear that out? Like, yes, they do. He's forever volume. He's career 37% 3-point shooter, getting up basically 10 threes per 36, which is exactly the kind of shit that the Pelicans need. But I just laughed at it. Like, I was looking at the first 36 numbers on Basketball Reference. His rookie year, he shot 36 threes per 36 minutes. He played 5 minutes and shot 5 threes. That was his season.
Start him tomorrow.
Are you kidding?
Oh my goodness. Hopefully he's good for a game winner or two to offset what he did to the Pels last year. Any final
a big game in hindsight when you think about the play-in
huge
season,
game.
you know?
Are you any final predictions for this season?
It's like people ask me about like the that, like, all right, my friends like over under, you going over under the Pelicans win totals? Like, I have no idea, man. It's like the year is exactly the same thing every year. It's like, if these teams healthy, they've shown they can be a 50-win team, but they're never healthy. And so,
are they healthy this year?
What's that?
Are they healthy this year? Yes, no.
Who?
the team in collective.
More so than prior years. I'm gonna be bullish on that. It feels like they've made the right investments. Or at least they're making changes where they need to make changes, and they're talking the talk, which they always do. But I don't expect like suddenly the team to be the Sacramento Kings of last year in terms of health, but I am optimistic about a healthier season this year.
Rapid fire, over under 60 games played for Z.
Under.
Over under 65 games played for Brandon Ingram. All NBA threshold.
Over.
Okay. All right. Well, that's it. That's it. Okay. Under
BI's
60
got a ton of
for
incentive.
Z.
Like you said earlier, BI's got a ton of incentive to be out on the floor this season. Yeah. So I don't think he's going to let minor injuries hold him back this year. But yeah, Z, I think I'm hoping that he gets right around what you were saying in 60 games, but he's got to prove it.
Cool. Well, if they were to get 59 games of Z and 66 games of Brandon, that should be a much better season than last. And I'm glad we were able to finally get back in front of the mic. Hopefully we have a lot more fun things to talk about than the doom and gloom trade stuff of their big players. But I'm excited for the season to kick off. We didn't even really talk about Memphis, but I feel pretty good about this with Steven Adams being out and no Ja Morant.
Let Jonas eat, man. I'm thinking about the game I went to, the Pistons Pelicans game last year, where they waited to just like let Jonas cook Nerlens Noel alive. And so just like go to the bigs and let's play
go get Jaren Jackson in foul trouble any way, shape.
Yep.
He will do it. He wants to foul you. What he wants to do.
Yeah.
So just let him do what he wants to do, and it'll be a good time. Anyways, Mason, good catching up with you, and I will hit you up later.
Sounds good. There goes.